Now looking at the importance of maintenance of infrastructure. On this, we are now joined via Zoom by Gundo Maswime from the Department of Civil Engineering, University of Cape Town. He's also the researcher with the Urban and Public Infrastructure Research Unit. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I mean, just listening to one of my colleagues there, just giving an update, and also earlier hearing from the Premier Panyaza Lesufi. How important is it that more than ever now that officials need to completely cordon off that area and in fact widen, the exclusion from people coming into that area because at this stage there is still no clear confirmation in terms of what really caused the explosion. Earlier we spoke to one expert who says because of the vibrations of the buildings and because of that rupture, the buildings are actually now at a very sensitive phase.
Yes, that is true, and I think it's very important that the area be cordoned off because when the explosion happens, there are waves that go in all three dimensions. So the vertical one is the one whose full extent or the damage that it caused we are able to see because of the way the road is ruptured. And the curvature of the road, we are able to see the force of the impact of the vertical wave. The horizontal wave is the one whose full extent will only be determined after they have done forensic investigations on the source of the blast and the impact it has had on neighboring buildings, which will also depend on the type of foundations that the buildings have. So the big risk now is that the lateral wave that goes into these buildings, there is space that gets opened on the sides of the foundations or under the foundations, depending on how deep it is. But from the curvature of the failure, you can tell that it's not a very deep explosion, so it may not immediately undermine the foundations, but there will be gaps that are opened underground. Then the building can go into settlement mode where it is consolidating that the spaces that have been opened by the impact of the blast. So that settlement can happen slowly, it can happen in days, it can happen in months, it can happen in years. So the geotechnical investigation will have to determine what type of consolidation settlement are they going to expect? And because it's going to be differential, which means it's not going to be the same around the full foundation of the building. It can start manifesting as cracks in the buildings. It can be exacerbated when it rains. And so there are all these possibilities that we need to look at. So the area has to be cordoned off indeed, and with the buildings, there has to be a preliminary investigation done in a day or two to see if the foundations would have been undermined, and that will be determined once the types of foundations have been exposed.
In fact, structural and civil engineers, as well as geotechnical assessors, as you say, are currently on the ground, trying to look at various factors. But we're also hearing, in these investigations that a number of activities are alleged to be taking place underground, as they're trying to investigate what possibly could have happened. And of course, we know that Igoli Gas believes that it is highly unlikely, that the explosion was caused by a gas pipeline or a leak. But just talk to us about these activities that are alleged to be taking place underground and how they could be, part of the investigations.
Yes, of course we are speculating now because the full extent has not been seen. But my immediate suspicion is that this looks like a gas explosion more than any other thing. Of course, we know Johannesburg has got a network of tunnels underground that were opened during mining activities and so on. And I think that suspicion is also coming because if there's illegal mining happening, there would have been some blastings, rock blasting that happens because the area has got this Carlton quartzite rock that needs to be blasted. However, that would have been a much deeper explosion, and it would have had a bigger damage. It would not have manifested like this. It really does look like a gas explosion. If you look at pictures, there has been at least 30 of these, mostly in the developed world, since 2010 only. So they seem to be getting fairly common. We know in Johannesburg there are some gas pipes that were put as early as the 1920s, 1930s, and it could still be one of those because there is corrosion that happens from within and from outside, that it could be them giving in. But from looking at the curvature of the collapse, there is all suspicion that it would be a gas explosion. It might not be belonging to Egoli Gas if there are other gas pipes that belong to other companies.
All right. Gundo, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. That's Gundo Maswime from the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of Cape Town.